And it's interesting because one of the things you find is that the some of the same issues just keep cropping up everywhere you go. Road safety, roads that are fit for people, is one of the big things. Today we've been looking at one road in particular where there's a 60 mile per hour speed limit, and it's very clear from all of the repaired fence panels along the way that this really desperately needs to be a 40 mile per hour speed limit, and that should be the standard rate on country lanes. The kind of roads where no one should be doing 60, and we need to really also have a situation where if you're doing 40 in the open countryside and you come down to 30 in a village, or ideally 20, then it's not such a drastic kind of change. So that's something that I'm talking about up and down the country. Also very much about 20 mile per hour zones. I know you've got a big focus on outside schools as a starting point, which is really one of those things that's just such a no-brainer. It's like outside schools, we all know that children are sometimes liable to behave in unpredictable ways, and no one should be driving past a school at anything like 30 mile an hour anyway. Another big issue that I find up and down the country is waste. And you've got your incinerator issue, Cornwall has their incinerator issue, Gloucestershire has their incinerator issue. Norfolk, I believe, has won theirs at the moment anyway, at this stage of the battle. It's a long, ongoing one. But it's one that we absolutely clearly do need to win, in that often there's issues with incinerators around concerns about safety, concerns about pollution, all of that. But there's also an overwhelming argument to say that this doesn't make economic sense. That's valuable resources that we need to be recycling, and that creates a lot more jobs if you recycle those resources instead of just burning them up to a crisp. But much more, we need to actually reduce the amount of waste that we're producing. And the fact is, there are some incinerators on the continent already that are actually buying in waste because waste streams have gone down so much. So if we actually built all of the incinerators that various counties have got planned around England, we're going to end up in a situation where there's this huge, screaming rise in the price of waste to feed all these contracts that county councils are trying to lock themselves into for 25 years. Which just, the economic arguments are just overwhelming, as well as the environmental ones. And improving public transport is the other issue that just keeps popping up and down the country. We were talking about improving the rail services. Someone who met me on the train this afternoon couldn't be here this evening because the last bus is 6:30 to my village. And that's, we need people to be able to rely on public transport. And last bus at 6:30 is not reliable public transport. So up and down the country, we've been hearing all of those stories. But it's always nice to hear some news stories. And so what I've been hearing today, and I think it's very interesting in reading your newsletter, it sets it out very nicely, together with a lovely illustration of the hand reaching down into the cash, is that you clearly have in Essex a real issue in terms of the way the county council has been running, the fact that it's utterly undemocratic, unaccountable. And I think we've got a very good story to tell to the voters of Essex, to the voters of Witham and Rochford, that you put 2 or more Green councillors there, and we're going to ask the tough questions. And that's something Greens have done up and down the country. A fresh voice in there really could make a difference to how Essex County Council would work. So I think that's really important. And I think I've been getting some lovely demonstrations today too of potholes. We've done some good looking at potholes and looking at road surfaces that are in a really bad way. We haven't actually taken any photos of the traditional glum councillor pointing at pothole while looking glum, but it's become a bit hackneyed these days. But there's clear that Essex County Council also simply isn't delivering for the people the money that's handed over to it, and that's something we can really hold to account. And as James has been saying to me, it's much easier when you're on the inside and you can just demand that officers answer the questions, whereas it's a bit more difficult when you've just got to do freedom of information requests to find out the most basic things. And the fact that the council won't allow members of the public to come and ask questions at meetings is simply, that's just not the way democracy is supposed to work. So I think, there's really exciting times. You've got an exciting few weeks coming up here, and hopefully climaxing with your first county councillors, among them being James, and we'll be able to see, you'll be able to see the real results of that. And for the Green Party, that's a reflection of what's happening much more nationally around the country, is we're very much building out from our strongholds, from the Brightons, from the Norwiches, from the Lancasters, from the Oxfords, and becoming a much more national party and having Green representatives everywhere. And of course, the next step after this will be the European elections next year, when there's a very good chance that we can get our first Eastern Region MEP, and we can indeed go from 2 MEPs to 6 MEPs in Europe. And when I go to Brussels and say that, the European Greens go, woo, and get very excited, which is nice to see. And, you know, that would also mean then we're going into the 2015 election in a very different position, because lots more people, you know, the people around here, if they've got both elected Green councillors, you know, district, county, an elected Green MEP, then when you're thinking about the Westminster election, Green just looks much more like one of those options that's on the agenda, that's available there to you. And that can combine with the fact that, of course, we got Caroline Lucas elected in Brighton Pavilion in 2010, the huge breakthrough. That took an enormous effort. The whole National Green Party virtually had to concentrate on that one seat because of the realities of first past the post. But the fact is that now we've done that, and lots of people, I'm sure you'll still find this sometimes on the doorstep, say, oh, I won't vote Green because you can't win. At which point you want to shake them and say, well, if you won't vote Green, then we won't win. You know, if Brighton, we can say to anyone, wherever it is in Essex or anywhere around the country, if Brighton Pavilion elected a Green MP, you can do it too. And that's what's going to be different about 2015 that hasn't applied to any previous election. So, you know, it's really bright times. We get the big push on do it right now for the counties. We can step up to the Europeans, and that really sets us up for the general election in 2015. And the fact is, people out there really are looking for new answers. It's very obvious that the old ways of doing things simply aren't working anymore. Neoliberalism, globalisation, the dreadful outsourcing, the cutting back of welfare benefits, these are no kind of answers. We have to have a society where everyone has sufficient. We don't have children going hungry, adults going hungry as we do now, and people switching the heating off and shivering because they can't afford it. But we also need to live overall collectively, within the limits of our one planet. And those are two things we've got to balance out in the next few years. We've got to work out. And we're the only people who are offering the Green Party. We have a way of looking forward of doing that. So, you know, well done to everyone who's contributing to that. Well done for the manifesto, and all the best of luck on May 2. Thank you.